Okay, I wanted to make this video to talk a little bit about the OODA loop. It's something you hear a lot in this community, um, but it's never really explained into great detail. The OODA loop is really how the mind's going to process information, right? So you're going to have to go through this process no matter what. Whenever you're performing an action, this is going to happen. Most of the time it's going to happen on the subconscious because it's neural pathways that have been traveled many times before, so the body just kind of takes over, and that's that. When you're learning something new, you're very aware of the OODA loop because it's a new neural pathway that you're creating. So when you're first learning something, you're really going to see just where in that OODA loop chain you're having difficulty, and then you could address each part as you see the problems occur. Even when you do get it and it starts to happen on the subconscious, you still need to have a conscious thought about it to make sure that you could work out all those kinks and get the best motion as possible, the best fluid motion as possible. So let me just break down what the actual OODA loop is and explain it a little bit further. The first part of the OODA loop is the observation stage, right? This is where you're going to observe what it is that's going on, okay? That's real simple, what is going on, but you could take that a lot further and start observing in greater detail, right? But after you hit that observation, you need to start to figure out now orientation, okay? Where are you in relation to what you're observing? Where is what you're observing in relation to you? Okay? That has to be taken into consideration for the next step to occur, which would be a decision point, making a decision as to how I'm going to approach this. Once I have that decision, then comes action. And these things are very minor, right? So if I had keys on a counter and I wanted to reach and pick up these keys and take off, I have to go through that OODA loop process. We don't really think about it because we've done that action so many times, that neural pathway's been traveled a bunch of times. At this point, we have all kinds of shortcuts. But you know, again, if you see a baby reaching for a set of keys, they're going through that OODA loop process for the first few times, right? So their mind's taking that scenic route. It's nothing quick about it and nothing subconscious about it. It's a very conscious effort to grab those keys. You see the baby reaching for the keys and trying to, he could observe that he wants the keys, but he's trying to orient his hand in relation to the hand-eye coordination and distance as to where those keys are. And then he's actually making the decision to grab those keys, and then comes the action. So there's a lot that's going on, and you see the early workings of that OODA loop when we look at it like this, right? We take it for granted when we just start to grab the keys. If we paid attention to that process a little bit more, we could find even more efficient ways to grab those keys over time. And once you understand the OODA loop and what it is and how it occurs, it will have you learn a lot better because you understand the learning process of what is actually going on. And as for an instructor, it makes an instructor better because he could teach you in relation to that process, right? So it's my job when I teach somebody something to be able to figure out where in that OODA loop chain they're having difficulty, and then address them on that actual portion of the OODA loop that they're having trouble with, and then we could start to kind of fine-tune each portion and speed things up. Overall, this is how we're going to increase reaction time. It doesn't really happen at first because first you have to create that neural pathway, right? That hasn't been created yet. I'm showing them something new for the very first time. They're traveling that neural pathway for the very first time. So there's a lot of kinks in the chain. It's slow, it's sloppy, it's messy. They forget, they hesitate, they freeze. All of that stuff is just problems with the OODA loop. So then I have to actually address each problem. And then once they get that neural pathway clear, it's still the scenic route, but at least they have the move. Now we start chipping away at that and just finding shortcuts and shortcuts and shortcuts and shortcuts until we find the best possible path, right? And that path is traveled so much that they could just access that on their subconscious very quickly. Overall, this is what's going to create good reaction time and a very good gross motor response to an action. But that's what's happening on the breakdown as far as how it should be delivered and how it's being learned, right? Both parties have to know that. If so, it's going to really accelerate the learning curve. It's going to take a lot longer if I can't figure out what's going on with them, or they can't figure out what's going on with them. But if we both understand the OODA loop and just how the mind processes information, any information, something as little as grabbing keys to a very complex move, that's what's happening. And it's on a loop. So I may make my first, observation, orient, decide, act. By the time I get to the action, the orientation has changed. He's moved, he's applied a counter, something's happened, so now I have to go through a whole new OODA loop to counter the OODA loop that he just created. This is where it starts to get tricky, and this is where we start to talk about counter fighting and things like this, and things get real complex now because we're cycling through those loops very quickly and very interchangeably. That's a higher level, right? That person operates at a very high frequency. This is where somebody could do something, and to one person it could look very complex. To the person applying it, it's simple and basic. That's a relative term, right? So yes, basics are basics, but later on somebody's complex is going to be another person's basic, and vice versa. It's just frequency. What frequency are they operating on, right? How strong is their OODA loop? That's what you're seeing. That's where you're going to see this vast difference of a person who could just make these adjustments very quickly on the fly and stay, in great composure and just go very fluid from one move to the next move to the next move to the next move. There's very little kinks, if any at all, in their OODA loops, right? Again, those are neural pathways that have been traveled a lot by that point for the person to work those so smoothly. But that's what you're seeing, that's what's occurring. When you see the people start to freeze, start to hesitate, you have to stop, think, okay, well, what's going wrong? Where are they stopping? Where are they freezing? Is it in the orientation phase of the OODA loop? Is it in the decision phase of the OODA loop, right? Once you can address that, you could fix the problem. But you can't fix the problem until you understand where the problem is, where it's actually occurring, right? So as an instructor, it's important for me to know the OODA loop to a higher level because it's going to help me teach and speed up people's learning curve, and that's really my job. I explain the process to them in great detail because I want them to be able to spot it in themselves, right? That way I don't have to micromanage them the whole time and constantly be like, okay, this is where you're messing up. Even if I'm not with them, because of what I've shown them, what I've taught them, they could be able to spot and fix their mistakes even when I'm not around. So that's good instruction, right? That's me teaching people to be, I don't know, you could call it anything you want, but operators, problem solvers, people that could think on their feet without me having to micromanage, or without them doing stuff just because I told them to do it, just because coach said do it like this. No, I'm going to explain to you why you're doing it the way that I'm showing you, why this neural pathway is the one that I chose versus the other neural pathways. I'm going to explain all that in great detail, right? And I'm going to let them feel it and explore it and figure out and really feel why I'm showing them it's that way. Not so much me just telling them. That way they're pay closer attention to the process, and when it's time to do it, they'll do it not because I told them it's right, but because they feel it, know it, and they know that it's right because of doing it. Their questions have been answered live in real time. This is good instruction, but it's going to allow them to be a operator who could think on his feet, right? And that's what we're looking for. I mean, I don't want to train people to where I have to micromanage and constantly be on top of them. In the beginning, that's going to happen because, again, we're creating new neural pathways, and I get that. But there needs to become that time where they could start thinking on their feet, and they could tell me before I tell them, oh, I did this wrong, and this is why it was wrong, and that would have opened me up for so-and-so, and then I would have been caught with that. Right? Now that shows me that they're understanding, right? They're picking up what I'm putting down. They're able to think on their feet. They're able to go past the basics. But this is how it's done. So I just thought, you hear the OODA loop terminology thrown around a lot, especially in the firearm community and things like this, but it never gets explained in great detail as to what it is and why it's important, why you should even bother learning about each part of that process. Well, this is why, because it's going to accelerate your learning curve, right? So you need to know what it is, what it looks like, and then how to function in each one, right? So First I have to observe what's going on, right? Let's say the observation is the guy throwing a punch at me. I have to observe, okay, he's throwing a punch at me. Then I have to orient myself to him. Well, where are we in relation to each other? Because this is going to determine my decision and action. If he's punching from 10 feet away, my decision may be to do nothing. My action will be to do nothing, and I will be successful because he couldn't hit me from there. When he's a lot closer, and if I don't make a decision and action and I'm going to get creamed with that punch, well, things change, right? So my orientation is going to be, again, timing, rhythm, distance. How much time do I have? How much distance do I have? And then what is the appropriate rhythm that I should come back with? So there's many ways to defend a punch, right? It's not that one is right, one is wrong. There's a lot of right ways. There's quite a few wrong ways also. But I have to figure out what kind of punch that is. Okay, it's a cross, it's coming very straight, and he's very close to me, so that's my orientation, right? I have a choice. Now, I could go this way, I could go this way, so my decision may be to slip that punch, right? And this is my decision, right? So I have to observe he's throwing a punch. Orientation, he's close to me and it's a straight punch, so I need to move on a lateral line. I'm going to make my decision. I'm going to move laterally left. Boom. I make the decision, and then the action follows. I just went through the OODA loop. Now, there's another punch coming right around. Okay, so I'm going to try to initiate my OODA loop before his second punch comes around. So now it gets real tricky. But that's what's happening when somebody's throwing punches at you. And at first, it's a conscious thing. It's like, okay, he's throwing the cross, boom. And you learned it in a conscious fashion. To where later you'll be there and subconsciously you're already going to go through that OODA loop process super clean because you've traveled it many times before, right? So that's just a quick breakdown as to what it looks like and what I'm talking about in relation to OODA loop and what it looks like when somebody's attacking you. So if they're throwing that punch, I have to observe what kind of punch are they throwing. Is it a straight punch? Is it a rear side punch? Is it a lead side punch? Is it a looping punch? All of that has to be observed. Then orientation. Is it close enough to hit me? If it does hit me, what's coming next? Like, what's his next available shots, right? If I move this way, what do I get for moving that way, right? Or what are my next available shots? All of this is happening in the orientation phase, which is where a lot of people make mistakes. Then I choose the appropriate decision. Okay, well, I'm going to slip this way and throw a hook, Then I actually perform the action. So the decision and the action part is not normally where people mess up unless they chose the wrong decision, right? So like if I chose a spinning heel kick when this person's this close to me, that's not the appropriate rhythm or combination for that range under that timing. So not that spinning heel kick wouldn't work, but it wouldn't work under that condition. If he threw the punch from further out, well, now spin, kick, it works. So again, people focus on the wrong things a lot of times. They're like, oh, the spinning heel kick is bad, it's wrong. Or spinning heel kick is great, it's the world's best move. Both those interpretations of the spinning heel kick are wrong. Sometimes it's right if you choose that appropriate rhythm at the appropriate distance under the appropriate timing, it's correct. If one of those things are off, it's not correct. So don't focus so much on the kick. Focus on what makes that kick successful, right? When you start to understand fighting at this level, things make a lot more sense and things get a lot easier. So this is how you should accelerate your learning curve. So just a quick breakdown on the OODA loop. I hope this video helps a lot of you. But this term does get thrown around a lot without ever really being explained. So I just thought I would touch on it a little bit today. So thanks for watching, guys.